On Friday night, Atlanta police officers approached 27-year-old Richard Brooks, who appeared to be asleep behind the wheel of his car while waiting in line at a fast food restaurant drive-thru. When officers tried to detain Brooks, he resisted arrest, leading to a scuffle. In the moments that followed, recorded in a series of police body cameras, restaurant surveillance footage, and bystander cell phone videos, Brooks appears to use one of the officers' tasers as he flees. The incident ends when one of the officers opens fire, leading to Brooks's death.
While there may be debate as to whether this was an appropriate use of deadly force, I firmly believe that there is a clear distinction between what you can do and what you should do. I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force and have called for the immediate termination of the officer.
A day later, the officer who pulled the trigger was fired. The Atlanta police chief resigned, and the fast food restaurant where the incident occurred was engulfed in flames as anger over Brooks's death led to unrest on the streets of Atlanta, in a country already on edge in the wake of previous deadly police encounters.
We need reformation of how police officers do their jobs, how law enforcement does its job. Because what happened yesterday to Rayshard Brooks was a function of excessive force, and the decision that the fact that they were either embarrassed or, panicked led them to murder a man who they knew only had a taser in his hand.
There has been a disconnect with what our expectations are and should be as it relates to interactions with our officers and the communities in which they are entrusted to protect.
It's a disconnect lawmakers in Washington are increasingly under pressure to resolve with bipartisan legislation that addresses police reform, especially in the wake of the recent death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis. Republican Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma says he would support a ban on police use of chokeholds.
There's been a long-standing principle out there that is not needed for that situation, and there's been a consensus document that was done in 2017 by law enforcement around the country to say that is not needed. So I think that's not an issue for us.
Former New Jersey governor and Republican candidate for president in 2016, Chris Christie, points to successes in police reform in the city of Camden, New Jersey, as an example for other communities to follow.
We got police officers out of their cars, onto bicycles, on foot, and embedded them in the community, both from a law enforcement perspective and socially, George, working with the communities and working with young men and women in the communities to develop trust. Second was de-escalation training. And the watchword for the de-escalation training is first do no harm, and that violence is a last resort.
While lawmakers in Washington seek to find common ground on legislation, some states have already passed sweeping police reforms in response to the protests that have dominated headlines across most American cities over the last several weeks. Kane, Farabaugh, VOA News.